right, welcome back to the broadcast. Still have with me the gentleman, and we get to the conversation. Mukuru, I know you want to say something about what Prof says, but allow us to loop in Wakili briefly. Wakili, this then would land us to a legal conversation of sorts. Do you suppose what Professor says, has some flesh?
Well, I think look at it from a revenue perspective. We will earn money as lawyers if you were to arrest Fred and take him to court. And we'll obviously go, and he will get a lot of support from lawyers countrywide. But by the way, as he put it correctly, if there is a charge that needs to be brought against Fred, it ought to have been brought long back. Okay. It was never considered. And he says that political gerrymandering operates in a certain way that propagandists and other people strategize together and throw in some spanner into the works, and then people create traction on an irrelevant issue or on a non-issue. The truth is, Fred Matiang'i was involved in the Ruaraka land saga, but I think it was cleared at that time. But if anybody wishes, because criminal cases don't get old, anybody can bring that matter, there is no issue. And it will be clarified in court. I think the major concern for me is Fred comes from a non-political background. And this is what Gen Z is excited about. He's coming from unusual quarters. It's not the normal things we know. Somebody comes up to sweet talk you and ask for your vote. He's coming from, I must deliver. If you listen to his words in the couple of weeks he has been here, he hasn't promised a damn thing. He has not. He says we are in a very complicated moment as a country, and then he says if people can, as Kenyans who are resilient, if they come together, we can resolve this. I think that is leadership. If you look at his approach, he's not promising you nothing. He's telling you we need to come together and resolve the problems of our country.
All right.
So whether there is River Yala, which this man seems to have some bit of thesis, I will not attack him now. But the truth is, if there is issues with River Yala, I mean, we have had Mukuru Kwanjenga, you know that. We've had Shakahola, you know. These things are always there, and it is true that they should be investigated properly and transparently. We need to know how our body is found at Yala, River Yala, why, and finally who is responsible. I can assure you from the little knowledge I have today that Shakahola will never see the light of the day. You will not get proper answers, neither will Yala be or this one here in Mukuru Kwanjenga. Why? Because governments always know what is happening on their land. Never be too naive to imagine that something is happening along Kenyatta Avenue or here in Thika Road or Kiambu Road and the government doesn't know. So whether it is Fred, whether it is Uhuru or the president today or the former presidents, these things must end. And the hope we get when you see Fred is there's that promise that if we decide to stop this, indeed he can stop it.
All right, and Mheshimiwa here is seated on this space and of course holding his particular office courtesy of the UDA that carries the government of the day. I hope he speaks on behalf of the government. Before we come to you, Mhesh, that Fred Matiang'i himself kama pamba, and you, I remember sometime in January argued that perhaps Fred Matiang'i would not bring much to the Kenyan political scene. As you respond to what Mheshimiwa says, or perhaps Professor says right now, what do you make of his coming? Because it appears grand.
You know, as an expert in messaging, especially in political communications, what will make candidates run, they must differentiate themselves from the rest of the competition. So messaging is very key. But to address the earlier issue you raised, and the professor answered is in a manner which was very strategic. When you talk about River Yala, and the reason I've got a lot of interest, I went to the prestigious St. Mary's School Yala. So River Yala, I know it, I took a shower when there was no water in the school. So I know the river very well. But if you're talking about maybe bodies are found in River Yala, if you are going to accuse Dr. Fred Matiang'i of those bodies, then you are suggesting that in fact Dr. Fred Matiang'i was the Inspector General of Police. Because the Constitution is very clear that the Inspector General has got autonomy, operational autonomy. Now, if you want to link Dr. Matiang'i to that, then again you have to demonstrate that in fact he came up with a policy which was adopted by the cabinet, which was approved by the cabinet, chaired by President Kenyatta. And then the deputy president was in attendance. And then this was given to Dr. Matiang'i for onward transmission to the Inspector General of Police. Now, if that is the case, then Dr. Matiang'i and President William Ruto will be in trouble. But again, while doing research for this show, I tried to establish whether or not, in fact, anybody went to the law enforcement officers to complain that the next of kin, in fact, has disappeared and the body was found in Rivayala. That was not the case. But coming to the 2027 presidential elections, right now, as we speak, there are so many balls in the air. And there's a former defense secretary in the US called Donald Rumsfeld. He elaborated a very serious policy, philosophy, saying known knowns, known unknowns, and known knowns. So we are in that space where it's very complicated. But when Dr. Matiang'i came back, initially, you know, when Jeremiah Kion started saying that this gentleman is going to run for president, people said, wait a minute, this gentleman is not a politician. He has no capacity even to run a campaign. But his entry to, when he came back to Kenya and he went to Kisii, he has created the impression that he has beaten everybody in Kisii to a pulp, and he now controls that block. And the last time that happened was with the Simeon Nyachai. And in my view, the entry made to Kisii now has given him a political capital to come to the national level. But when he went to, there's this place now, I don't know whether it's famous or infamous, called Wamunyoro. All the other people who spoke, starting from Rigathi Gachagua to Kalonzo Musyoka to Eugene Wamalwa, all of them were saying, Ruto must go. They never indicate where they want Ruto to go. And they say that they want Ruto to be a one-term president. So Mura or Alima or Hassan, sitting back at home, they're wondering, if you say Ruto must go, how will that affect the cost of mortgages in Kenya? If you say that you want to make him a one-term president, what is the big benefit? And there is a possibility that Mr. Rigathi Gachagua wants to nationalize his personal problems. And the normal voter does not want to be part of the Rigathi's personal issues with William Ruto. And as a message advisory consultant, I noticed that Dr. Matiang'i described Kenya's problems and offered solution, and he differentiated himself from the rest of the crowd, which in my view is a big thing. So
aligning with them, would that be a plus or a negative? I'll be coming back to that shortly. Let's first of all get to hear what Mhesh has to say. Mhesh, there seems to be a crackdown in your party on the individuals that have gone, outrightly supporting this Matiang'i coming and bid and all that. Of course, the latest casualty being Gloria Oroba. It's probably contrary to what we see with the likes of ODM, because we have seen Onyonka going out there, even the governor going out there. Perhaps we've not had much of a crackdown or, a target from the ODM side. What is your position? Are you a bit shaken? Because also a gentleman speaks and says that anyone who goes against the Matiang'i tide in Kisii, in Nyamira, or anything, their goose is cooked.
Thank you. I am not worried. And I have a lot of respect for Dr. Fred Matiang'i. He's someone that I personally know. But at the same time, truth be told, unlike President Ruto, Dr. Fred Matiang'i has never run for office. I mean, for an elective office, and remains untested in the national campaigns. For me, where I sit as an elected member of parliament under UDA, I want to say this. I am not threatened by the fact that many people are saying that the Matiang'i wave is going to sweep people. The people of Kisii, the people who elected me in my constituency, Nyaribari Chache, they have no business about who comes or who runs for what seat. What the people of Nyaribari Chache want to hear is, have you done our roads? Is the government tarmacking our roads? We want electricity, we want power. So all these other sideshows,
Has this government done that for the people of
Yes, of course. The government is doing very much. It is true, yes. There is a lot of road infrastructure. Wait.
Professor.
There is a lot of development by the Kenya Kwanza administration. So from where I sit, Dr. Fred Matiang'i is part of the historical rot that we in the Kenya Kwanza government is trying to clean today. His close ties to the policies and leadership styles rejected in the last in the 2022 elections is going to make it very hard to present him as a fresh or transformative option. That's my take.
Let me tell you now.
Yes, I wouldn't ask a question because it looks like you have an answer already, yes.
Yes, let me tell you why I think Mheshimiwa next to me has actually panicked.
Okay.
I tell you why. This is how I know. This is how I know somebody has panicked.
Okay.
Matiang'i has been away. He comes here for 2 days. He pulls a ground which nobody has seen him before in Kisiland.
They call him a political robber.
And then he go to Nyeri. He is received like a rock star in Nyeri. And then when you look at social media, it unleashes attacks on Matiang'i, what they have not unleashed on Kalonzo. They have not unleashed, I'm talking about UNDA. They have not unleashed that level of attack on Martha Karua. They have not unleashed on Wamala, I'm talking about the other presidential candidate.
Right.
They have not unleashed on Justice Maraga. He's a nice guy, he's my friend. They have unleashed incredible amount of attacks on Matiang'i. You know, that tells me they realize Matiang'i is the person to beat.
Okay.
So Mheshimiwa can say whatever you want here. But the truth is, the reaction from the Kenya Kwanza side against Matiang'i can tell me as a scholar that they fear 3 times.
Is it correct? Is it okay? You want to say something? Yes.
Otherwise, why are you not ignoring him? You know what I will do?
Okay.
Or just ignore the guy.
That's okay.
If he is harmless.
That's okay, Prof. But maybe just to answer him, and just before that, you had raised an issue of my colleague, Senator Ogoba. It is every leader's right to associate with anyone.
Right.
So Senator Oroba or any other person are free to dangle anywhere.
That is not what the party dictates.
Well, at least that also
that's true. Of course, that is unconstitutional according to the party. But that aside, I want to tell Prof, my brother here, Dr. Matiang'i's entry into the political scene does not, or we as Kenya Kwanza government do not feel threatened at all. Let me say, the euphoria that you're talking about, they had of course mobilized people to come to Kisii from across from across Nyanza, even from Homa Bay, Migori, to come and showcase that yes, which is okay.
And let me ask a question in relation to that. If they're going to mobilize these people successfully, and they say that this is Right Honorable Raila Odinga's home turf, and the broad-based government, we assume, is meant to bring something on the basket sometime in 2027, doesn't it get you worried that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga then misses out on these votes, and that means something has been removed from the broad-based Kenya Kwanza basket?
Not at all.
You want to say?
Not at all. Let me tell you. Dr. Fred Matiang'i was in the last administration. He was like a co-president with Uhuru Kenyatta. President William Ruto beat Raila Odinga with the deep state, with the system, Matiang'i, Kibicho, and all those characters. How is it that today someone can imagine in their wildest dream that Dr. Fred Matiang'i or any other Wamunyoro or any other person
the mountain
is going,
which is now gone. The mountain vote is gone.
It is okay.
All right. Is it the mountain vote gone?
Okay.
Well, let's allow.
Just 1 minute. I would like these people to continue thinking like that.
Okay.
And the reason is very simple. Me, I'm persuaded that Raila Odinga never wanted to be president.
Okay.
So people are giving Ruto credit he does not deserve. Because if you want to be president, you know, in a long time, those old days when we used to steal cows, Africans we didn't want a fight. So we used to graze with you, and they take the cows which are not protected. If Raila wanted to be president, how come we didn't have any agent in Central Kenya, which was Ruto's stronghold? He didn't have agent in Rift Valley, which is Ruto's stronghold. So when you run against somebody who does not want to be president and defeat that person, it is...
You want to tell me he did not have agents? He did have agents.
No, he didn't have agents. I know that for a fact.
Well, okay, at least courtesy of
I was his supporter.
a former president. Oh, you are his supporter.
I was Raila's supporter. I know for
They allowed for the vote to be...
They just allowed people to do whatever they wanted in the strong.
No.
Interesting.
So you can't give Ruto credit of winning an election which there was no competitor.
Prof,
Okay.
I think it is very important when we make some statements. I mean, you must have information,
Right.
proper information.
But I was one of his biggest supporters.
That's okay. I know what I'm saying. I'm referring to what Mheshimiwa said, that there was huge mobilization
Okay. Oh, yeah, not to
of
me.
the people of Kisii. And you know, we are not all politicians, by the way. And so there is some area we cannot compete. Like, that it's very easy to say that. I have private information in terms of Fred's coming to the country. You saw at the airport, there was absolutely low key. He jetted into the country at about 11 in the night when he literally came to see his mom and his family over Easter. The gentleman has not resigned from his work where he works.
Well,
he did not come for any political event at all. In fact, I'm telling you what can be classified as information A.
Okay.
You call roads A104. This is real first-hand information. Now, then he meets politicians. They tell him, you know, things, and he's not a politician, as we have said. Things don't go this way. We must be on the road.
Okay.
So they visited his home country, home county, sorry. And then it turns out that everybody has been burning to at least get to talk to him. Okay. And they come there to the junction in Kisii, and things turn out, and they go to the stadium.
All right.
Of course, in politics, it does not work like that.
Absolutely.
That is true. In politics, it doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
And I'm telling you, it's not in politics the way you conventionally do it.
Okay.
By the way, anybody can research on this and it can come out. The truth of the matter is we have not done a homecoming for Fred Matiang'i in Kisii. This is true. Kisii starts all the way from South Mugirango, where Osoro comes from, and goes all the way to Nyamira.
Okay.
Here along Kemera side, where that is Kisii County alone.
All right.
Then there is Nyamira, which goes all the way to Sondu, Bomet area, Sondu. So Fred has not done any homecoming. That is
Just
true.
yet.
So let him now go. He will resign. He will come back, and then he will say, now we are going to start our campaigns, and we will receive at the airport. So Mheshimiwa was saying that there was mobilization.
But there was a lot of mobilization.
No, there was no mobilization.
We know that the Jubilee Party has been on the forefront of
that ground is very easy to know an organic ground.
Okay, that was organic according to you.
Linda,
all right,
I'd like to make a contribution.
Let's allow.
Out of the 4 stopovers that Dr. Fred Matiang'i made, 3 of them were from 3 of them is in my constituency.
Okay.
So I have ears on the ground. I have network. I know people are reaching out to me.
So these leaders that are of ODM that accompanied the bandwagon, so to speak, do you suppose then were also part of this? Because then why would you?
They are part of the mobilization.
Okay.
They were the team leaders.
So are they trying to paint this one as a local leader or a national leader?
As a local leader.
Linda, you're making me feel like
there you go. Your time. You have your time.
First of all, I must make a confession that Zaire is my schoolmate.
Okay.
And I've seen him grow up. And I doubt whether the entry of Dr. Matiang'i to politics, to run for an elective position as a president, will make him panic or even become nervous.
Okay.
He's very solid in his political architecture. We used to drink Nyao milk together, so I know him fairly well. So he's very solid. But you may not say the same about UDA is a political party, because Dr. Matiang'i has shaken the ground. Now, contrary to what he has indicated, when you're running for political seats, you do not need to start from the chairman of a cattle dip, then you become an MCA, then you go to the National Assembly, then you go for president. We've got stories from elsewhere. If you go to the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump came from there with a parachute, and he ran an unconventional campaign,
Exactly.
and is the head of state. And he's said to be doing very well. Never mind that he's come up with these tariff debates, and people voted for him on account that he's going to change the economy. All of a sudden, they see the cost of life going high. Everything is complicated, but they're still happy with him. And in my view, I think it's very, very early in the day for Zaire and his political party to now dismiss Dr. Matiang'i by saying that it's a mobilized crowd. Let's go with these premises and assume that it's a mobilized crowd. That the people are paid sitting allowance, working allowances, all these are allowances. If indeed it was a mobilized crowd, then Dr. Matiang'i has demonstrated that while he may not be a politician, that he can also mobilize a crowd, which politicians are known to do. During the 2007 elections, I was very active in the political process because I served as the PNU press secretary. So I know the theory of campaigns as a scholar, and I also know the practicals of a campaign as a practitioner. Believe you me, there is no crowd which comes on its own motion, organic. They must have had announcements somewhere. They must have been told by the peers, let's go and have a rally. I mean, somebody will not stop going to tend his, tea farm or coffee farm or milk their cows and show up for a political rally without a cause. So there is a percentage which is organic. There's another one which is inorganic. Now, you did ask Zaire a question which he dodged. That if these people who are mobilized, they came from parts of Lonyanza to come and receive Dr. Matiang'i, then Raila Odinga should be worried that his core base that has got an irrational and emotional attachment to him, in fact, were mobilized to go and receive Dr. Matiang'i. But
also, let us be historically factual. Do you suppose that, say, the Kisii region has largely been, a stronghold of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, critically looking at where we come from politically up to this level?
I would say that the Kisii nation is probably the most liberal political population you have in Kenya today. There's a member from every political party. And you are not necessarily elected on your political party. You could be from ODM, you could be from UDA, but people look at the personality. And it's for that reason that Zaire is seated pretty. He's not worried whether or not he's going to be re-elected. He can decide to run on any political party, and the probability of him winning is extremely high. However, again, one would be extremely naive to imagine that challenging President William Ruto is going to be a walk in the park. Because President William Ruto has demonstrated that he's got a grassroots presence, a very solid presence. He has demonstrated that he's got an elephant's memory. I mean, you can criticize him about talking about the roads, Keancha, Mosocho, Marani, across the nation he knows. And then he's also a national leader. So as these candidates, prepare themselves for 2027, they must go down to the basics. And everybody needs to come up with a strategic narrative. That if you're talking about Dr. Frederick Matiang'i, what is strategic narrative? He has already carved it, saying, I know Kenya's problems, I'm going to offer solutions. How does that sit with the normal Kenyan? We'll get to know during the 2027 scoreboard. Go to Rigathi Gachagua. His strategic narrative is that President Ruto and I were joined at the hip, lakini tumekosana hapa hivi, so I want to teach him a lesson. Now, I doubt whether there is any rational Kenyan who wants to invest in shares with Rigathi Gachagua because he has got personal issues to settle with President Ruto. People are unlikely to do that. And then go to Kalonzo Musyoka, go to Eugene. In fact, one of the key, all the guys who are running, the ones who've been in the public service, they need to tell us where do they serve. So that Dr. Matiang'i says, when I was in the Ministry of ICT, these were my 3 signature events, or programs or proposals. When I was in education, 3 signature things I did. When I was in ICT, 3.
I want to come back to you on that very matter, but allow us to shift briefly to Prof. I want to come back to you on, if we're going to talk about certain ministry, how much more when now an individual is handling all the ministries as president? What are the probabilities that they're going to perform? Because it's one thing to perform in one ministry. It's one thing to be accorded all the ministries to manage. But then, Prof, you want to respond?
He is surprising me because I've appeared in many debates with my friend here. And most of the time, Matiang'i was quite intelligent.
But?
So what are you suggesting?
Today is surprising me. He says it will be a huge task
To challenge
William Ruto.
Is it not reality?
No, it's not.
Why?
All you need to do is to look who supported Ruto in the last election and ask yourself, is that support base is still there? So the biggest supporting base for William Ruto in the last election was the Mount Kenya region.
Right.
This Mount Kenya region left William Ruto 5 months after forming the government. Gachagua right now is just following them. They left. Now, the other support was actually young people, the Asolas. Because William Ruto brilliantly marketed himself extremely effectively as somebody who is going to solve our problem created by politicians for 61 years, for 60 years. And we saw him as a liberator.
Right.
Is he still having that in generation?
Perhaps not.
The other group is the church, supported Ruto heavily. How many church people have you questioning whether they made the right decision? The other group is every Kenyan who is employed, who we have to assume is a person of right mind. It's a sane person with the attack on what is actually your property, because I don't understand about this court. Because the personal property is protected by law. Your pay slip is actually your personal property. The court also seems to have abandoned these people. Now, these are like 3.4 million or 3.6. Tell me, which Kenyan who has gone in this 3 housing nonsense, which, I mean, I'm calling, I'm using, sorry, I'm using.
Prof and Prof.
I wish Prof can be.
Let me use a better term.
No, I mean this, Prof. I wish if you just take shorter.
Let me take
because
shorter.
That issue of William Ruto being smart must be properly prosecuted here for your viewers.
So what I'm trying to say is that when you take all that together, you realize it is actually William Ruto who has a bigger job to do to reclaim his constituency. It's not the challengers. And the number of presidential candidates is an indicator that the people feel this seat is vacant, they can get it.
But all right, briefly so that we come to Mahesh.
All I wanted to say
and I want to be fair to him because it looks like he's the only one who's
I've always referred William Ruto as Messi. Messi, you know, the player. He's not only strategic, he has the passion, the oomph. He comes in like, I have to do what I want. And you all of a sudden start to follow him. So what, this is Matiang'i, the man. That is what you are, today you are, you know, treating your viewers with. The Fred Matiang'i people must understand that William Ruto wins always and succeeds because of the level of network he does. Today we are discussing him, how we don't want him, he must go. By the way, you would be so surprised that he's going extra miles. I was told he spoke to Matiang'i on this. There was a news, I saw it on social media, it could be true or false, but like they spoke when Fred was going to kiss on that morning. Somebody called Abuga had written about it, and I think yes, how he gets his information. So, and that is where we fail, by the way. Uhuru did not win with Raila because when Uhuru was addressing people in public podiums, Ruto was literally snatching him, his people. He was taking them away. When did Mbadi, for example, who had been picked by Uhuru, when did he identify with William Ruto? So I think that Fred's people must do strategic planning and extensive networking to deny William Ruto the chance, you know, to win the 2027 elections. I know you're not comfortable with that, but the truth is, why are people complaining? I mean, people, every other day they are saying, oh, you know, we are not happy here, our money is going, as talked about the pay slip, people are hungry, you know, prices of basic commodities have gone high, and the promise that you would fix the economy has not happened. So nobody in Fred Matiang'i's camp, nobody should sit pretty. Nobody should be comfortable, actually, because William Ruto prepares and plans every single day.
Wakili, I want you to prepare an answer to this question, but that is after we listen to Mahesh. Is strategic networking then the approach that he's taking right now of joining the opposition bandwagon, if we want to call them Kalonzo Musyoka, Wamunyoro, Martha Karua, and the likes. Is that strategic in any way?
You want that now or after?
No, after him. All right.
Thank you, Linda. Two things. Number one, Dr. Fred Matiang'i has never announced that he is running for presidency of the Republic of Kenya.
All right.
So let it be very clear that he has not announced.
He has not disputed what Jeremiah Kioni has announced.
I'm talking about Dr. Fred Matiang'i.
Okay.
Has not announced that I, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, I'm going to run for presidency. So all these are sideshows.
Okay.
That on the side. Number two, His Excellency President Ruto assumed office at a time Kenya was grappling with high public debt and widening physical deficit.
From a government he was deputizing.
Which, of course, yes, in 2013, 2017.
Okay.
2017, 2022, we all know what happened. Right. But that aside, as I finish my point, however, amid these challenges, President Ruto's administration has made significant strides in development, in development and economic transformation of this country. So, what I'm trying to say, as a Kenya Kwanza government, we are not interested in politics. Who comes what to run against President Ruto? In 2027, the president will be there. He will come with his track record. Other characters, whoever they are, they will come with their track record. They will not be too late,
Mheshimiwa, will it not be too late for you to speak about that track record? Because if you're saying that there's been immense, progress, courtesy of the Kenya Kwanza government, don't you think that Kenyans have the right to declare that they have enjoyed of these proceeds? Or perhaps, is this well communicated so that Kenyans can as well come here and back your statement that indeed they have seen so much happening?
But we are all aware.
Okay.
I mean, it is a reality. We know what the Kenya Kwanza government has done. Look at the fertilizer subsidies. Look at the energy, the last mile connectivity. Infrastructural development all over the country. Surely you guys, without down President Ruto's development, economic transformation.
Without going to data, let's just make a random exercise. Let's just make a random exercise.
All the presidents since independence.
And you have a right to declare that way. But let's just make a random assessment here. My camera person, my other camera person, the lady seated there, the gentleman seated there, do they feel like the president or the government?
Of course, yes. Why not? Professor,
what do you think?
What do you think?
Yes or no?
Of course, no.
Wakili, yes or no?
He says this.
No, they don't want to.
Let's come back to you.
Let me just.
Let's allow him the chance.
The biggest challenge that Kenya Kwanza has faced is policy communications, and you can see the way Zaire is pushing that agenda. In policy communication, first of all, you must have a message, and you must identify stakeholders, and the stakeholders must feel part and the process. Yeah. One of the biggest challenges of President Ruto is having strategic visibility. It's very visible every day, but there is no strategic communication. So you don't know exactly what Kenya Kwanza has done. And as a result, majority of people are feeling left out. And one can easily compare it with President Biden. By the time President Biden was leaving office, all the key performance indicators in the US were in top shape. But when Donald Trump comes into the campaign, he says, when you go to the gas station, how do you feel? When you're going to buy eggs, how do you feel? Now, if you engage in strategic communications, then people can actually identify. Okay, there's something else some scholars and practitioners in communication say that when you're doing a good job, you don't even need to communicate. But right now, we're in that space where we are filled with the misinformation, filled with the disinformation and the propaganda. So you must engage in strategic communication. You see, Zaire is very, very emotional about this. He's driving the point so well, to the extent that he's even gone to the extreme, that people can even begin to doubt that if you've done very well, And you're saying that you inherited an economy which was in a bad shape. Where did you get the resources when there are people who are dying, committing suicide because of pending bills and all these kind of things? How come people do not feel this in the pocket? Like
Quickly, are you convinced that then Honorable Matiang'i would be the game changer? Because then we're talking about him and the few ministries that he's headed, which he has performed good, according to what Kenyans argue. Do you suppose then that this is a ministry you're handling, another one that you're handling and you handle to perfection? What would he do to convince Kenyans that he is going to be the game changer in handling all these ministries as the president? Because we understand then he's going to be inheriting, from what you say, a government that, or perhaps, inheriting a country that has a dwindling education sector, that has concerns with the health sector, that has concerns with even legal aspects that are actually manning these particular sectors. Quickly.
And I know Professor will speak to this into detail because he's an expert. The definition of a leader is that you paint a picture of where you want your nation to go or organization. You identify top talent, and then you give them financial resources.
Okay.
So essentially, you create systems that are going to deliver, and then you take a back seat. If you speak to people who worked with under President Kibaki, they said the moment you agreed on stuff at the cabinet level, Kibaki will let you work because you've agreed on the deliverables. And believe you me, for guys who watch basketball or whatever kind of games it is, the scorecard never lies. It's very clear. The scoreboard never ever lies.
Okay.
People want to see the results. But at the same time, they want to be sure that everything you're doing in the nation is aligned to the citizens' selfish interests. If you don't do that, you may deliver very well like President Biden, but your preferred successor, Kamala Harris, will find a challenge communicating with the voters.
Okay.
No, I like Mheshimiwa here. I think UDA should be sending this Mheshimiwa here
to speak on their behalf.
Okay. Because this is how they are going to settle Matiang'i. You see the things he's saying them with such force, and he actually genuinely believes in them. Because me, I can see it's honest. but then when you go there, and I want to give you a...
Prof, let us give credit.
I want to give you...
Look at the road infrastructure.
No, just 1 minute. The road, you have not even made 1 kilometer of road.
Look at the healthcare reforms.
Now, let me give Mheshimiwa an example about the healthcare. Okay. And that's why I'm saying they should send him, because he will really, truly make UNDA lose.
Okay.
Healthcare. I have a friend who had an operation under NHF at the Lions on the renting and detachment.
Okay.
NHF paid 256,000. The same fellow went last week for an operation to remove cataract. You know what Cha paid?
Okay.
That 3,400. So the guy had to get all the other money. Okay. So if you bring something new, that's the point. It has to be better than the one you are replacing. Okay. Now, Mheshimiwa wanted to say that something inferior to what was being replaced, the Kenyans appreciate it. Okay. That's why I'm saying this kind of blind belief that you can lie to Kenyans and they imbibe the lie is what you refer to Matiang'i. Because Matiang'i is not a politician. He won't lie to you. He is going to tell you that, look, you can't go through that war. You will hit your end. But the politician will tell you that war is made of marble.
Okay.
It will split and they give you the way. So what is going to zero Matiang'i is because Kenyans are used to political lies. To people who have no conscience, they don't feel shame, they have no shame. You see what happens with the liars, these political liars who have been having, and the Kenyans now understand it. These people, they have no empathy. They will not empathize with you when you are suffering. They will not feel shame when they lie. They will not feel shame when they steal.
But Prof, why would Matiang'i be that individual?
Now, why is so different?
Why would he be that individual who sat in the same government that Kenyans were really tired with, and they were actually saying, Malizeni muende? I mean, the noble thing would have been, why don't you resign? Because then you feel like this government...
Let me answer that question.
As a cabinet,
Prof, we'll come back
as
to
a
you.
cabinet secretary.
Let me answer that question.
He had 10 years as a cabinet secretary.
You would have easily
to do all
said
those
that I
things
cannot
there.
associate.
You didn't see them.
The Christian just want to override one that one to listen. Look here, you see, Matiang'i was working under president.
Right.
As a cabinet minister for the president. You should look at what he did as a person. He went to an education ministry. That was in serious trouble, stealing elections, all those things. He demolished those cartels. Created a clean system.
How sustainable was it?
It's extremely sustainable. It's very, you see, when you are focused, when you are not a politician, you don't intend to please anyone. In fact, I remember one statement Matiang'i said, and that statement may give him the presidency. He said, we are not here to be popular. We are here to deliver on our promise.
Why did they deliver?
Okay, they delivered. There's a fellow.
2020.
No, just listen. Matiang'i delivered in the 3 ministries he served.
ICT.
Okay, ICT.
Yeah.
And then when you go to these issues that has now become a culture, corruption has become a way of life, this fellow has no report in Public Account Committee, no report in the Audit and General for 10 years. People go there for 2 years, my friend, and the looting is shocking the entire warrant.
Let's allow the other gentleman to say something.
Now, strategy, you asked, Linda.
Yes.
You know, and Prof is here. I don't know if you forgot. If you see a student in class who is lagging behind every time, getting low grades, you quickly set up, you know, a meeting with the student, and you tell him, you know, you need to do this and this, so that you reach where we all want to go. You don't wait for 2027. You don't wait for the examination year, my friend. You quickly go down to correcting what mess is there, and then examination year will come by its own. So when you talk about strategy, there are so many good human beings who are in Kenya Kwanza today, as we speak. There are many good, you know, technocrats as well, who are actually in government today. But they are probably not given free hand to do their work because of hands-on approach by the president. So now I see Gloria Oroba is being hounded because she came to Kisii, and you keep asking the party mechanisms, who is top? I mean, what is the party chairman, president, as you know, leader of this party? What are they doing? You realize that actually a small matter like that, the president knows about it. And a matter like deputy president being impeached, the president knows about it. So that you think that the parliament is independent and free. You think that the technocrats are, because can you imagine you are a PS in water and you just can't use your head as a PS, like the way you went to school, you did your reading, and look at the kind of statements we've been having from Foreign Affairs. The PS is a lawyer, but people are just, some people in mask abduct people on the road and they are taken out of the country. And these are countries we have relationships with. And then you see the lawyer coming on media, the kind of explanation he's giving, you actually question yourself, is he present with himself? So the biggest problem we have is governance. And that's where the strategy comes in. The way policy, like he said, is developed and then how it is trickled down to the people who should implement it. You know, it appears like there's no communication. And that is a problem we have with Kenya Kwanza, by the way.
Okay.
It is not that the people in other, you know, parties have been born miraculously. No. When you look at Fred, he tells you that I want us to go this direction and we will definitely implement this policy.
Wait a minute.
So whoever stands along the way,
I'll briefly ask
will really have the biggest problem.
Wakili, I'll ask you the same question I asked him. We're looking at Fred perhaps, because then he's the individual we're discussing this point. And we are seeking to understand whether he's going to be the game changer. And you talk, and I ask whether it is strategic for him to work with the likes of Kalonzo and everything. Politically, we understand that we are at a space where as a country, we acknowledge the role that coalitions play in us forming governments. And that it gets to a point where he will want to reward loyalty. If he is to go with this gentleman all the way. And so these are the individuals that are going to be rewarded, maybe as ministers, as ambassadors, as... correct me if I'm wrong.
You see, let me say this, just very briefly.
Yes.
We don't have different sets of human beings in this country.
Okay.
We are all the same,
Kenyans
whichever way
and-
you look at it.
All right.
But the type of governance skills in an individual as a president can literally, you know,
Change
propel
the- okay.
the others to do the right thing.
Fair
you
enough.
can't tell me that Eugene Wamalo as a lawyer is so useless because he has been in a political office. No, the problem is when a person becomes president, everybody looks up to them. So you look up to the president because that's where, you know, everything is coming from. So the way you gravitate, the way you move, the way you talk, the way you call people to a meeting, and the decisions you want to implement literally
Will
influence
adjust.
the way others. So there's nothing wrong with Fred going to visit Wamunyoro
Okay.
or meeting
Superman.
Kalonzo.
All
But what
right.
we are saying, he should tap into the whole talent in the country.
Okay, fair
so,
enough.
so that he's not limited
Mahesh, I'm coming
to
to
the
you.
4 or 5 people who have been in politics. Yeah.
Mukua.
Yeah, let's go to economics and psychology.
I mean,
Quickly.
there's
Economics
no
tells
angel.
us that human beings act in their selfish interest. But occasionally in Kenya, you've seen when we go to the voting booth, we don't act within our selfish interest. Because we are victim of the Stockholm syndrome, we've fallen in love with our captors. Yeah, if you go to the Japanese political philosophy, they've got the wabi-sabi philosophy, where they say that we love the beauty in imperfections. But when you look at the 2027 scoreboard, the crystal ball, right now, Rigiji has created this political environment that any pain in Kenya today is associated with President Ruto. And this is what Professor was talking about, that if you've got a pay slip, if there's any pain in your pay slip, President Ruto. If you go home and your power has been disconnected, or there's no water, or there's food insecurity, it's associated with President Ruto. Now, that is the danger President Ruto will face in 2027. Because there's that principle in psychology called the pain and pleasure principle. Psychologists, scholars, and practitioners assume that every human being responds to those two things. For instance, part of the reason why you are comfortably seated there is because you're going to be paid a top salary and you're going to have an upmarket lifestyle in Nairobi. Now that is the pleasure. But you know, if you mess around, you get fired, you end up going to the village, you're going to suffer. Now, Matiang'i is positioning himself as the person who is going to give Kenya pleasure, while Rigiji, from the time he was fired, when Rigiji wakes up in the morning, when he's having his breakfast, he asks himself, how am I going to inflict pain in William Samoei Ruto? What am I going to talk about that is going to inflict maximum pain? You know, you remember some stage he made some allegations that you wonder, is this actually the person who was the DP? At some stage he made allegations that even if you seek legal counsel, you can't repeat of what happens at State House because you're not sure whether Ishmael will be there to protect you. And also the same thing made by J.B. Muturi, who is well known to Professor here. The way they've told us the State House operates, you begin to wonder whether is this fiction, is it drama, is it misinformation, is it the actual case? But what does Mora in Zaire's constituency believe? Because all these people have been fired when they keep on repeating it every single day. And you remember, they don't have anything else apart from inflicting pain on the president.
Right.
So people... But they have been in the State House. Why would you doubt them? I mean, they are always in the State House.
When did they experience the Damascus moment? When did they start discussing things? Why were they not discussing?
So are you saying that it is not strategic for Matiang'i to...
No. For Matiang'i, it's very strategic for him to offer himself as a person who is going to give Kenya pleasure.
And tag along this gentleman?
If I were Matiang'i, I will create a brand, a standalone brand, which will be more powerful than any political party in Kenya, more powerful than all these politicians, so that when you get to sometime Easter in 2027, that your brand is so powerful than any political party.
Let's allow Mheshimiwa briefly and then come to you, Prof.
There are two things that I just wanted to mention briefly. My brother Wakili had mentioned about Senator Gloria Oroba being victimized.
Right.
She's hounded, actually.
According to what Wakili is saying, but I don't believe. You know why? Because she was not the only UDA member in that function. We also had a member of parliament, Mheshimiwa Nyamoko, who comes from Nyamira, and chair lands committee, and he has not received any form of communication from the party. So I don't think that
I mean, she was even here last week complaining about this coming from
there was just
the party
complaining,
leadership,
but
as good as today as well.
We haven't seen any letter yet on that one. Number two, the Kenya Kwanza administration led by President William Ruto has been in office for only 3 years. Surely, how can you today or Kenyans wake up and say that they expect miracles from President Ruto?
Okay.
Why are we not talking about the development, the track record since we took over office, the digitalization of over 5,000 public services, the SMEs, the hustler funds, the healthcare reforms, subsidies, why are we not talking about it? Why don't you want to give credit to the Kenya Kwanza administration? Okay. And by the way, let me tell you, for your information, 2 more years before we get to the election, there will be a total change in the economy. Take it from me.
All right. Okay, so a summon is different. I hope you're privy to the information that there was a summon that was sent to Senator Gloria Ruba in relation to this and signed by the committee chairperson, Charles Njenga.
Okay, I haven't...
Okay.
You know why I sent? Yeah. Why I sent, I think the Kenyans need to study these politicians properly.
Okay.
Because I'm just listening to Mheshimiwa here, very eloquently expressing how this government has performed, and then in the time was just 3 years. I want them to know that the government which have succeeded in the world, they succeed in the first 6 months, the first 1 year. The Kibaki government, in the first 6 months, we have voted the happiest and the most hopeful people in the world. Ishelema in Zambia, when he took over, the Chinese were running the airport. Within 9 months, the government had taken possession. Obama in the US, within 1 year, he had returned around a recession into a growth. And so was Bill Clinton. And so was Margaret Thatcher. The moment the government failed to perform in the first year, it won't perform even if it's given in 10 years because the performance comes from people's euphoria, people's hope created in you that you are moving in the right direction because the government, it doesn't work. It is the people who work. And then, it's shocking me that Hustler Fund, which basically failed, which did not work. You see, there was no intention of making a solar fund work. If there was, that's what they could have done. They could have collected that money, put it to KCB, or put it to cooperative bank. People with the experience of giving loans, converting small-scale micro enterprises into small-scale enterprises into medium enterprises. But how do you change the economy by giving a Kenyan 500 shillings and 1,000? There was no intention of making that fund work. And that's why I've never understood the people around the president.
Fair enough. Gentlemen, we have to close as we give us our last sentiments. Perhaps I'd love for you to touch briefly on the formation of the IEBC, because there's been a lot of noise left, right, and center that finally it looks like the white smoke is coming, but at the same time, people are not convinced that this is the right team as nominated by the president. We start with you, Dismas.
Well, talking about the Hustler Fund, it's very easy for the elite to say that 1,000 bob or even 500 does not add value to Mama Mboga. But there are people in Kenya today who struggle to get 1,000 bob, who struggle to get 500 bob, and 1,000 bob or 500 bob is material in their cash flows, in their balance sheet, in their profit and loss account. While one may argue that the Hustler Fund has had challenges, but there are a number of people who will go to the top of Mount Kenya, literally, and say that this Hustler Fund has been a success. There are many people that Pope Francis was taking care of, the marginalized and the one in the periphery, that the Hustler Fund has cleaned. They've been removed from the Credit Reference Bureau, and now they've joined the formal banking. So in as much as you may not like what President Ruto is doing, you must give him credit. Number two, it's ironical for people to complain about the IBC selection committee, and there was an advert placed in the newspaper, and people were told, apply for this role. Now, you don't apply for that role, or you apply and you are not shortlisted, and then again you start saying that this thing was a complete waste of time. But again, we must ask ourselves, why do people fear these jobs at IBC? Because if you go for an election and one of the parties does not like the outcome of that election, then you will be thrown out of office. That is why we need to give people a pat on the back, the ones who had the guts to apply for those roles. Because if you look at the history of those commissioners and the chairman, all of them, it's as if they've committed political suicide.
Okay.
But the ones who've been elected, even a few days ago, we saw the media saying that defective nominees. So where did you expect the nomination committee to fish out for people if they don't apply? And then lastly, you did ask that if Dr. Matiang'i becomes the president, what are the major challenges? One can talk about education. Education today in Kenya seems, you wake up every single day, there are new acronyms, things are falling all over. If you go to transports, there's even no transport policy in Kenya. By the way, did you know that constructions of roads
As we sum it up.
at the beck and call of the president? We don't have a roads policy.
Yeah.
Even when you talk about healthcare, there's this issue of organ transplants that we don't even have a legal framework. So you find a donor and a recipient agree to go to Mediheal and do their thing. When the recipient is not paid, they blame Mediheal. So those are some of the things that we expect all the leaders to pronounce themselves on.
Right.
And the next election, 2027, is going to be won on meritocracy.
Okay.
If you do not demonstrate meritocracy, then pack your bags neatly and go to the village.
Fair enough. 30 seconds, gentlemen. Make it tight.
The biggest issue in Kenya is there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest. It occasionally, goes into jailers and infighting, but there's a lot of interest in the country. And I think leadership and all people want to go to office should give Kenya a break in terms of allow Kenya to exist, faithfully, transparently, politely, without having to have so much interest that gets personal so that you start, looting, public resources and all that. In terms of IBC, I think the only problem is there was another list added into the whole thing when they had already closed the application time. And that might take us to court. But I think as a country, we need to move on. I mean, a lawyer has been put in office. There are several other lawyers in that list. Let the country move.
All right. 30 seconds, Mahesh. Serious 30 seconds. Okay.
IBC does not elect leaders. Leaders are elected by the people. President Ruto has upheld the rule of law. The nomination process was constitutional and very, very transparent. The president continues to strengthen institutions, not by controlling them, as part of his governance agenda. So let us support the new commissioners to succeed. The incoming commissioners, they have a very strict timelines to prepare for the election, for the next electoral cycle. So they deserve goodwill, institutional support, and not suspicion and sabotage.
Thank you. 30 seconds, Prof.
I think I would like to congratulate Matiang'i and Uhuru Kenyatta for handing power peacefully, in spite of the things they were saying before. When the Kenyans spoke, they respected that. That is the kind of leadership we want. The other thing I want to say is that Kenyans don't have a right to complain about the NBC because there was something called in Antico, which limited the selection of NBC to Azimio and the Kenya Kwanza, as if they would be the only candidate in the election.
Right.
People should have taken that in Antico to court and insist that there is no right for Kenya Kwanza to select one person in parliament, then Azimio to select another one in parliament. They have a Kenya like me. I may want to declare that I'm running for president. Where is my person in that process of forming the panel, which then went to interview? So the panel was wrong, and therefore the outcome cannot be right.
Okay, fair enough. And therefore we must live with that because we did not complain early enough.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Well,
Just live
interesting.
with it.
Last speaker, Professor Gitile Naitule, Professor of Management and Leadership. Thank you so much for speaking to us, as well as Zahiri Jihanda, Member of Parliament, Nyaribari Chache. Thank you so much, Mahesh, as well as Ishmael Nyaribo, who is an advocate of the High Court, and last but not least, political risk analyst, Dismas Mukua. And the numerous feedback that we have online, we must say asante sana, but time cannot allow for us to speak. Perhaps just, to be fair, Josie Litan says, I have nothing against Matiang'i, but Kenya needs a noble leader who can clean up the political mess that was created by the previous leaders. And of course, that's basically what the conversation was all about. The choice is yours. At the end of the day, you have the vote. My name is Linda Lela. It was great having you. I look forward to see you again next Sunday for more and more as to the politics of the day. Do have yourself a lovely night.